Hey, thank you for joining us. I am Brian Johansson.
And I'm Andrea Johansson.
So glad you're here. So we have some cool stuff to talk about today.
We do. This is actually the week of our 33rd anniversary of meeting. And we actually still remember and celebrate that.
Yes, it was an awesome, scary, dynamic, amazing, crazy weekend that we met.
Are you saying that it was scary to meet me?
No, well, yeah. I was scared when I woke up on Saturday. It's kind of like that standing at the edge of a cliff and you want to jump into the water, but you're a little bit like scared and nervous. And
Well, you knew before I did that we were going to be husband and wife. I certainly didn't know that. I thought I was going to actually marry someone that I knew from high school and told you as much 2 weeks later. Said, "You're a really nice guy. You're a great friend, but that's probably all you'll ever be. So please relax around me."
the night that we met, I was like, I don't want to get involved in anything that distracts me from you, Jesus. And I proceeded to go home that night and announce to the entire world that I met someone because I knew something was up.
And I didn't.
But I couldn't put my finger on it. But it was so, my heart was racing, my emotions were lit up, and my mind was, wow, something is happening here.
And I was in a completely different world. But I went away for the weekend. And when I came back, we connected. The night that I came back with my girlfriend that I had been away with for the weekend, the two of them talked Sunday night. And I was like, oh, that's so sweet. They're getting together. And they talked for about a half an hour. And then he called me on Monday night. And we talked for an
Like
hour and a half,
hour and a half, 2 hours. Yeah.
And we began a friendship.
Yes. And it was an amazing friendship that began with two components, I think: praying together and walking together and becoming
Yes.
friends.
So let me back up just a little bit because I think this is an important part of this. And the reason why we want to share this is because we've learned some things about walking through life with others in a way that invites them into deeper intimacy and relationship with Jesus and helps them to encounter the truth of who he is versus religion. And that's really what we want to talk about today, because the idea of discipleship or mentoring or just walking with people through life, we generally interpret that as being tell them what to do and what not to do. And that so wasn't the way things were between us.
No, not at all. Not at all. It was a daily walking, daily,
like literally walking
and talking. And go ahead.
No, so when we met, I was living more of a wild child kind of a life, not crazy. I wasn't someone who did drugs or was really promiscuous or things like that, because that scared me, right? And so I just wasn't living a life that necessarily reflected the fact that I said that I was a Christian. And when you and I met, you were pretty serious about your relationship with Jesus.
Yes, I was really wrapped up in a group at church, a college age group. And I was like, man, Jesus, I see this entire world in front of me, this great adventure of pursuing him, of going to Argentina and Chile and all over the world and seeing all these really cool dynamic things taking place. I was like that adventurer on the precipice of everything.
Cool way to describe that.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I was out to have fun. And whatever that looked like, I was in plays during the summer and just going out and having a really great time with my friends. And so my girlfriend and I had been to a festival that night. We decided to go back to Bennigan's.
Yes, we met at Bennigan's.
We did, in the bar at Bennigan's. And
I was at a booth, I'll say that.
My friend and I
but
were
it
at
started at the bar.
but we were drinking Diet Cokes because they knew that we were underage and we couldn't get away with it, versus somewhere else where I probably would have been able to slide by on that.
The funny thing is I was working at a restaurant that day, and sometimes when you work at a restaurant, you smell like that restaurant just because of everything there. And so I brought a sweatshirt to change into, and we were living in Connecticut then, so it was a little bit chillier at night. And I put on this red Nebraska sweatshirt. My dad went to the University of Nebraska, and one of my friends gave it to me. And I walk in and I'm thinking to myself as I'm putting it on, someone's going to comment on me being from Nebraska. And sure enough, when I walked in, I see a girl mouth the word Nebraska. And I'm like, oh boy, here it goes.
Well, and that would be because my girlfriend and I were both nannies at the time, and she was from Nebraska. So she was super excited that there was someone who had a Nebraska sweatshirt on, and she was determined to go chat with him and find out, was he from Nebraska, anything else? And I'm like, I'm not going to go talk to some strange guy I don't even know. And she said, well, I'm going, and left me sitting at the bar by myself, which felt very awkward. So I went and finally followed her over there, and you were already in conversation with her.
Yes, conversation. So one thing that I was never talented at and never really moved in that direction was inviting people to hang out with me.
No, picking girls up.
Okay, you said it very well. And yes, I was never good at that. And so I'm like, because they would only just say no. So I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden she walks over. I'm talking to the two, and I go, hey, you guys want to have a seat? And I'm like, where the heck did that come from? Because it just came out.
And we were like, sure, why not? And so we sat down, we started talking. I sat next to his friend. My friend sat next to Brian, and we were each chatting with the other one, right? And I'm always a little trendy. I like more of the trendy kind of things. And so I had on what was very trendy at the time, which was a jean jacket covered with buttons on the front, very flirtatious ones, tiny little writing. So people had to get up nice and close to see what it was that they said. And then I had some other buttons mixed in with all of these.
And I'm like looking at this jean jacket going, why do people wear buttons on their jean jackets? I think it's ridiculous that they wear buttons on their jean jackets.
And I think it's important for you to know at this point in time that we are exact opposites in every way, except for the things that matter. So we think things through entirely differently.
Yes.
We approach things differently, and to the point where it's comical. So opposites attract, though.
Yes. Oh, yeah. So I look at her jean jacket, and I'm like reading some of the buttons, and I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah, okay. And then I see one that sparks something. I think it was Petra.
Yep.
And I go, Petra. I said it out loud.
I said, yeah, they're a Christian rock band. Have you ever heard of them?
And I'm like, yeah.
And I had another one on there. I said, what about Amy Grant? And you said,
we just really dated ourselves, by the way. But that's
we
cool.
we did, but that's all right. We
And
already
like,
said 33 years.
Yeah. And I'm like, Amy Grant, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're like, are
you? And we both knew that we were asking if the other one was a Christian. So we started talking like crazy.
Yeah, conversation switched back and forth to us, and it was really cool.
We started talking about music. And so long story short, we were leaving, and my girlfriend and I were going away for the weekend. You gave me an Altar Boys cassette tape.
Cassette.
Again, dating ourselves. However, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, wow, this guy just gave me a cassette tape, and I could walk off with his tape and never give it back to him again. This is pretty amazing that he would give me his cassette tape. This made a big impression on me at the time.
And for me, I'm thinking, what's the worst that could happen? She get to know Jesus more.
So we leave after exchanging phone numbers, and there's a one-way street up the center.
Hold on one second, though. Can I go back a little bit? So we get in our cars, and my heart is already starting to race, and I'm like, what is going on here, God? What is going on? And I'm already going through this whole conversation with Jesus, like, okay, now I'm on the precipice of this great adventure of where I'm going and pursuing you. And I really don't want to be distracted. I really don't want to be distracted. And yet I will not deny the fact that you may have just put someone in my life that you want me to be connected to. for your glory, for the kingdom. Not necessarily in those words. And I'm like, all right, I'm just going to push this to the test. And because then if it's not of God, I'm just going to act it right there in the spot, so I don't get emotionally and things wrapped up in it.
So we drive off. That's why I'm picking up the story.
Okay.
We drive off, and as I was trying to say, there are two streets through the center of Stamford, Connecticut. One goes north, the other goes south. We were heading north on Bedford Street.
Yes.
And my girlfriend is driving. I'm in the passenger side. This one is in his Volkswagen GTI, pulls up on my side of the car, rolls down his window. I roll down mine because we are in cars where we do not have electric windows. And
1983 VW GTI.
He sticks his head out the window and yells over to our car, "Hey, you guys want to go pray?" And I looked at my girlfriend thinking to myself, that is the weirdest pickup line I have ever heard in my entire life. But she just kind of shrugs. And I said, sure, why not? And that began this aspect of praying together and walking together.
So for me, while I was in the car, I'm having that conversation with God. I'm just going to put this to the test. And if they're really, serious about you, then we can move forward.
So we pray in the parking lot. We say goodbye. My girlfriend and I leave for the weekend. It was actually one of the wildest weekends I've ever had at a fraternity that had just gotten its charter back, and we were celebrating at their formal, and they needed dates. We came home. She spoke with him Sunday night, as I mentioned. I spoke with him Monday night. And then she got busy because she had work, she had school, but you and I still hung out.
Yes. Then was it Tuesday night or Wednesday night?
Whenever it was, you said, "Hey, you guys want to come over and pray?"
Yep.
And the two of us came over together.
Yep.
And that was the last time she hung out with us, pretty much, because of how busy she was.
You were wearing your Black Dog sweatshirt and biker
Martha's
shorts.
Vineyard. I love that you remember that. Anyway, so we just would talk every single day.
We talked about everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it was truly an amazing thing getting to know her. And getting to know her, I was beginning to get a glimpse of what's ahead of her in life, where God's calling. Yeah, I wouldn't even say that. It was just, there was such a fascination.
That would be true.
Yeah.
And I was drawn to him because he was the most genuine guy I had ever met, and truly such a great friend. And I truly thought that was all he was ever going to be. And as I mentioned, told him as much. But 2 weeks later, we ended up dating. And within 2.5 months after we had met, we were engaged. But we didn't tell anyone for another 6 months because we knew our parents would probably kill us. So
yours in particular.
Mine in particular, which we'll get to that. But this span of time in between, that's really what I want to highlight, because this is where we began living the renovated life.
Yeah.
Because the way that you walked with me during that time period, there was a renovation that began to happen within. And it was a drawing me to the Father's heart. And it was asking me questions. It was listening. It wasn't follow these rules, these regulations. It wasn't about religion. It was about connecting me with the Father's heart.
Yeah.
And we would go walking through the woods. Ravona Woods was the name of it. It was a neighborhood. So it was a paved street, but it was a very wooded area with houses and things.
It was a beautiful dark walk. As far as when I say dark, it was no street lights, tree coverage, except for the very center where you could see the stars.
And I would talk to him about the stars, and he would talk to me about Jesus. And there was a point in time where we sat on a bridge, and I had things come back to memory that I had suppressed or repressed, whichever way you want to say that. And the memories of childhood sexual abuse came up. And I recognized that I had been sexually abused by 3 different individuals before I was 11 years old. And it began when I was 2. And I have very clear memories of that. And there was a really pivotal moment in time where we were sitting on the bridge, and I had all of this shame, and this all came tumbling out of my mouth because to me, you were so holy, so righteous, so, Jesus, everything. And I was filthy rags in comparison. And I felt like this had to come out because I couldn't be around you with the way that I was. And I was literally, after I had shared everything with him, screaming at him to just go away and leave me alone. Go away, go away. My head was down. I couldn't look up. I'm sobbing. How the neighbors didn't come out as I
It's
was,
amazing. I was just thinking that.
I'm like,
How come the cops weren't called?
nothing. I'm screaming. And yeah. But you stayed.
It's because everything that you were saying was not what I saw. Everything that you were saying about yourself or feeling was not what I saw. I mean, I knew somebody else, and I loved that other person, the person that I knew.
Well, and I think you saw me with the Father's eyes and with his heart of love.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think God gave me the ability to see you truly for who you are.
And how often do we walk with people in life and they share deep things with us, and we tear them apart in response?
Yeah.
We wound them more by the way that we kind of interact with them afterwards, whether we say something harsh, or not even harsh, but not accepting, or I don't know even where I'm trying to go with that, but you accepted me in that moment, and you stayed, and you made sure that I was able to lift my eyes and look you in the eyes, and for you to tell me that you love me no matter what, and that what happened in the past is the past.
Yeah. Exactly with that. Very often, from what I've seen happen, is many people try and fix the other person too.
There we go.
And that it's not always to fix them so that they're good, but they fix that person so that, like, for example, my world would be okay. And so that if I could fix her, then I could walk through this and take care of it. I knew it was well beyond me. I knew that it was not something for me to fix, but it was someone for me to love like Jesus did. And I remember my conversation that night. Jesus, what do you want me to do, and how do I do this? And I know your thoughts about her.
And if you had walked away as I was screaming at you to walk away, this would look very different today than it does.
Yes, it would. Yes, it would.
So because of the way that he loved me unconditionally and accepted me for who I was, and didn't try to fix me or change me or tell me what to do or not to do, it gave me the freedom to discover that with God.
Yeah. You gave the ability and the opportunity the opportunity and ability for the unveiling of the truth of God in your life.
Because the God that I had been introduced to and shown throughout my lifetime in a variety of different ways was one that was very authoritative, very demanding, very, this was a quote unquote punishing God. If you made a mistake, there were going to be repercussions and judgment. And, I grew up with a dad who loved me deeply and was very wounded himself. And he retired as a judge. So I'm a judge's daughter. And living in that environment, I have a really strong justice mantle that I walk with, that I've had to learn what that looks like in kingdom dynamics, in God's eyes, and what that looks like to walk out and not be someone who is judgmental. I walked very judgmentally for a very long time. And that's what I grew up
Yeah.
under. And so I expected God to be judging me. So to encounter someone who, when I told them my deepest, darkest secret, and you didn't judge me, but you loved me and you accepted me, you were Jesus with skin on in that moment. You showed me the unconditional love of God. You showed me how Jesus came and he died for me, to restore that right relationship with Jesus, so that nothing would be able, or right relationship with God, so that nothing would hinder that heart to heart, spirit to spirit connection with him. And if you had acted differently and shown me religion and the things to follow, I wouldn't be walking in the wholeness that I walk in now.
Well, you just put into words like 5 gazillion different things. And I was thinking maybe 1/10 of that night that it happened. I was like, Jesus, what do I do? How do I do this?
I think what you have taught me is just how to be a friend,
Yeah.
and a friend without judging others. And you've taught me that, and it's then rolled into us as parents. And we tell a story of our oldest, who is now 26.
26. Wow.
We really are dating ourselves. But he's 26, and several years back, he came to us and he asked us if he could move back in. Now, this was after said child, who puts my strong will to shame, came to us in high school and in his senior year, and said when he was moving out, he was never coming back home again. But he came to us a few years after that and said, hey, can I come back home for the summer? And I looked at Brian and I thought, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Because at the time he would turn our house and our family upside down. And I very clearly heard God speak to my heart in that moment and say, just love him. And every bit of that justice part of me was like, but he doesn't live the way. Just love him. But just love him. But just love him. And it was pivotal for him. It was probably even more so pivotal for me,
Yeah.
because I learned how to walk in a way that just loved. And it was what drew him in part back to the heart of the Father, because yes, we still had our rules and things like that at home that needed to be followed. However, it was very different between responding with love versus responding with an expectation of bringing the hammer down.
So can I explain something real quick?
Please.
One of the things about just loving is many people automatically go, oh, they're just doing the just love thing, and they're going to be all soft and gushy, and they don't, or they haven't identified the truth of love. And when I say the truth of love, love is actually defined as a person, and how he lived and how he acted and how he treated. And that's Jesus. And he learned that by being in the presence of his Father. And he says he could only do what he saw his Father do and say what he heard his Father say. And so he is the one that healed. He is the one that delivered. He is the one that spoke hope, future, and life, no matter what the situation. He is the one that spoke truth to those who needed to hear truth, both in authority and both those who were destitute. That's being the person of love. and living that out in a reality. And it's not just a warm, gushy feeling that I love you, I love you. No, it's giving the way Jesus gave. And so I'll leave
Well,
it
and
there.
it's drawing the gold out of someone. And we talk all the time about how I used to be an early childhood education teacher. And I learned from one of my co-teachers how rather than her saying, don't do this, don't do that, she would say, hey, use walking feet instead of don't run. Or whatever the positive aspect was, the behavior that she wanted to draw out of that child. And that's really been something that we've worked to do,
Yeah.
drawing out the good and pointing a direction to go in that draws the gold out of someone.
Exactly. And love looks at who someone's becoming more than what they're doing.
Mm.
And so it's that whole vision about who they're becoming, because as they become that person, what they do will change.
And it's unveiling to them the truth of who Jesus is.
Yeah.
In his kindness, in his love, in his goodness, and Father God as well. Kindness, love, goodness, not cracking the whip and having an expectation of do this, do this, do this, you'll be approved.
Yeah.
It's not an earning of love. It is a walking in the truth of your identity as his son and as his daughter. And the fact that he is undone when we come before him in worship. We make the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords undone with a glance of our worshiping eyes. Look at Song of Songs in chapter 5 in the Passion Translation, and you will just have your mouth hanging open with how he views us as his bride and longs for us and how we make him undone in so many different ways. So he is a good father. He is a kind and loving savior. And when we are presenting him in that way, and this whole concept of Jesus died on the cross for the joy set before him. What was that joy? That reuniting of relationship between us and Father God. So looping back around to that, it's all about relationship. It's not about what we can do for him. Again, in Song of Songs, God talks about us being his partner, his equal. We're not trying to be God, but he's inviting us into this relationship of partnership with him.
Yeah.
To accomplish the things that he wants to accomplish in bringing heaven to earth and administrating heaven on earth.
So well said. So well said.
So in walking with someone in life, okay, again, it's often called discipleship or mentoring. We like to call it being friends.
Exactly. Because then you don't sweat mistakes.
Mm-mm.
You laugh at oops. You help clean up spilt milk.
You help them clean up their spilled milk.
Correct.
So giving them responsibility. You're not doing all of these things for them, but oh, okay, you made a mess. How would you like to clean that up? Happy to be alongside of you as you do that, but giving the other person the responsibility.
Yeah. You celebrate the victories, you cry, and you see Jesus unveiled.
And so we've talked about living the renovated life.
Yes.
And, Brian was in construction for almost 30 years.
Almost 30 years. Wow. Geez.
And so he's got a very strong background in that. And you actually began likening people to a house.
Yes. I would see, you go into a certain development and you would see certain houses would have certain issues because of the way they were constructed, and they were all built the same. They looked the same inherent problems. And God started talking to me about meeting with the master builder, the designer, and bringing out the truth of who your identity is, and then renovating your life to be all that he's called it to be.
So we've talked over the years about sometimes that looks like bringing everything all the way down to the studs.
Gutting it, moving structural beams or certain beliefs, altering certain aesthetics
Or structures that we have created, i.e. religion.
Correct.
And sometimes it needs to be taking out the rot because some things have become rotten.
Yeah, because sometimes there's leaks you don't know about, but yet at some point they will cause failure.
And sometimes you've let things go, you know it's an issue, but for whatever reason, you've put off addressing it. And
Yeah.
so it becomes worse and worse and worse and worse. So what could have been an easy repair became something much greater to handle.
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes that one can be somewhat scary because there's certain things in life you may not want to address that you may know are there, but you're like, whoa, you can touch anything, but don't go into that room. You're not going in there. They don't even let God in there. And trust me, he's already there and he's waiting to renovate it with you, and in such an amazing way.
And yet sometimes there are things that are just simple tweaks, maybe because the season has changed. So, I've got my autumn greetings wreath behind me because it became September 1st and it was time to decorate for fall. And so sometimes there are just small things that need to be refreshed, or sometimes spring cleaning. You got to get rid of some things, go through, because those are things that are attached to the past that you don't need to be hanging on to anymore. They are weight in your lives that you just need to get rid of. Sometimes those things just need to be thrown out. Sometimes they need to be donated. But there's a very literal aspect that becomes prophetic when you go through your closets and your drawers and you get rid of things, or you rearrange furniture. And this is truly a time where the season is changing, and it's time for us to change with it. And while I'm still in my sleeveless shirt, pretty soon it's going to get cold enough out that I'm going to need something warmer to wear. And we need to be aware of the changes in the season and, winterizing different. I remember growing up, we lived in a farmhouse and we would winterize the front porch. It was not insulated or anything else like that. So I remember needing to put plastic up on the windows.
I remember hanging the storm windows in the house in Connecticut.
So sometimes there's preparation of that type in our lives that needs to happen. So this podcast is going to continue on in a conversation about living the renovated life.
Can I say one thing about renovated life? So a lot of religion teaches you to be a certain way and do things a certain way. And you can see this reflected in the way houses are built. But when you're in a relationship with Jesus, he's calling you to become and do certain things and be about the things of heaven, of what he's called you to. And sometimes what you've constructed in your life can't handle that. And so he's calling you to be renovated. He's calling you to look into what is the truth of where you're leading me, of what you want to do in me and through me. So it may require, adjusting a room here, moving something here, widening or making smaller so that you can do things, be more about him. And it's something he wants to do with you.
Well, it just made me think about how when you're preparing a home to go on the market, the advice is take all the personalized things down and make it as free of knickknacks and things like that, so that when people come, they can see themselves living in this space. And I think in many ways we've done that with Christianity as a whole, or in the church, of strip it down so that it seems like anybody can be here, when God is calling us to be personalized,
Yeah.
because we've been created who we are for such a time as this, as it talks about in Esther, and for purposes that only we can each fulfill. And so there's that personalization of homes that's really important. And we're not all supposed to look alike. Maybe you're someone who loves a development that every single house looks exactly the same. I am someone who loves when houses have character. And it's the older houses too, where if you walk in, and there used to be a show, If Walls Could Talk. If walls could talk, I want to know their history. I want to open up a wall and find old letters from the 1800s in
So
there.
cool.
There's stories to tell, and there's stories within your home that has history, and the history is there for purpose. And some of that history, we need to let go of the past, because God is very clear about letting go of the past in the word. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in another episode. And some of it we need to remember. We need to remember our heritage. We need to remember who we are as his sons and as his daughter, and our inheritance found first and foremost in him.
A lot of times people spend so much money on things that are not that they're wrong, but they're off. So I go to anywhere from 10 to 20 houses a week. And I see these immaculate, crazy houses, bathrooms, kitchens. And then I see houses, and houses like this, you walk in and you want to eat there. You want to be with the family at this house because you see the pictures. You see the living room with the fireplace, and it's so warm and inviting that it's calling for someone to sit down and share life with you. Or a kitchen that feeds people.
Yeah.
Or a place that provides, you hear stories of kids in inner city who go to a house, and there's so much love and peace at that house that they fall asleep because they finally can rest.
And we want to be homes where people feel loved and welcomed, no matter where they come from.
Or even a safe house, because we work with safe houses.
We do.
A house where people can come, be protected and empowered.
Yeah. So we are inviting you to join us in living the renovated life. And we are excited to have launched this podcast with you today. And we're looking forward to the adventure that is yet ahead.
So it's going to be great conversations and questions too.
And it's going to cover a variety of topics. So
Yes.
Expect that as well.
Yes.
So thank you for joining us. And we look forward to our next time with you.
Have an awesome, awesome day.
Bye, guys.
Bye.